Actually, I lost my Yankee.
Hard to believe that just a year ago we were only moving into our space, and an awful lot has happened over that past year. We've had our angel group that launched about a year ago again, has now made a dozen investments, and I think we have 2 or 3 more in the works. We have 200 folks in our certificates program now, and working on developing a graduate certificate program that'll come online. We've begun the process of converting from an initiative to an institute. We have all sorts of new programs that are up and running. One of the ones that we're really excited about, we announced last Thursday, I think the press release just went out today, but a new partnership between Duke, UNICEF, and the USA Fund for UNICEF to bring the tools of social entrepreneurship to one of the world's really great aid agencies. So we're delighted to have you all here tonight. One of the, from my own personal perspective, greatest things that we accomplished over the past year is we brought Robin Razor to Duke from Michigan to lead our Office of Licensing event. So Robin, why don't you just say hi for a second?
Hi, well, again, you just said I came from the University of Michigan. I didn't realize I was coming to a football powerhouse. After this weekend, now I guess I'm going to have to pay a little bit more attention. I'm really excited to be here. If any of you know anything about Michigan, we were very strong in innovation and entrepreneurship, so the relationship with Eric's group is really important to me and the Office of Licensing and Ventures. We're doing a number of changes in the office, and where is Rob? Rob Halford in our office is now going to focus just about entirely on working on startups and helping our faculty when they want to be innovative and entrepreneurial, so they have one person that they can go to. Also, so our local community and across the country venture capital people can come and talk to us about the kinds of programs and startup projects that we have. So we really want to get more out there, be much more of a partner with our faculty, with all the different translational groups across campus, but in particular, it's been fun to work with Eric's group and to continue to do that. So thank you for the great welcome.
So tonight is the kickoff of Entrepreneurship Week that has a number of events all across campus, and I hope that many of you will participate in some of those. There's been tremendous advances in Pratt in their entrepreneurship activities over the past year. I see Ken Gall, who's here with us now, a serial entrepreneur. Bill Walker is here, who leads entrepreneurial activities in Pratt. Tomorrow evening, Pratt will have their own showcase of activities there. Wednesday night, we have the finals of the Startup Challenge over at Fuqua, and I hope many of you will join us for that. Thursday is our board meeting, and then next Tuesday, Suresh has his Innovation Jam, a Shark Tank for entrepreneurs from the School of Medicine to wrap up Entrepreneurship Week. So I hope that many of you will join us for those. We have 3 very interesting entrepreneurs who have relationships to the university tonight, and what we wanted to do is to just hear a little bit about their activities in entrepreneurship. And so I'll introduce them now, and they can tell you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll have a conversation about entrepreneurship at the university. So our first entrepreneur is Alex Dagan. So Alex.
I'm Alex. I graduated actually from Duke in 1991, which was our first national championship, for those of you who remember. Thank you. And in fact had the pleasure actually of being in school with Bill Walker, who was a star then as he is now, and a serial entrepreneur. My background is I've been the chief scientist at USAID, the Agency for International Development, and supported innovation and entrepreneurship and how we do international development. And also through my career have really been an entrepreneur. So setting up new organizations. At AID, it was something called the Global Development Lab, our DARPA for development. In Afghanistan, created the first national park. In Iraq, actually created the science institutions to rebuild science in Iraq. But most recently, I've been taking on the problem of how do we actually substantially improve the outcomes in conservation through a new company called Conservation Excellence.
Our second guest this evening is Bob Lefkowitz, who came to Duke a very long time ago, was an assistant professor, grew up here at Duke, has been James B. Duke Professor of Biochemistry for a very, very, very long time, and of course brought Duke our first Nobel Prize. So Bob.
Thank you. So as you've heard, I've been on the faculty a long time. 1973, I joined the faculty. I'm also an investigator of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, which I have been for 40 years and counting. And as I sit here, looking very much forward to the program, I can't escape the irony of my being called an entrepreneur, because throughout my career, I did everything I could to avoid being an entrepreneur. I was focused like a laser on my research. Perhaps that's why I did win the Nobel Prize in the end. And didn't want to do anything to in any way diffuse that focus. But 8 years ago, we made some discoveries in the lab that had some obvious, immediate clinical translation. Still, it would not have happened were it not for 3 senior postdocs who were involved in those discoveries, who were very entrepreneurial. And so they dragged me kicking and screaming into that role. And we started a little company called Trevena, which is now located in Philadelphia. And it went public 2 years ago. It is traded on NASDAQ and is developing a new type of drug to target receptors, a particular type of receptor called G-protein coupled receptors, which as a class are by far the commonest target of clinical therapeutics. And just in a nutshell, that's been my brief experience with entrepreneurship.
You know, I'm always struck by how often incredibly successful entrepreneurs don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. It's really interesting. And then our third panelist this evening is Brian Hare, who works in animal models of cognition. So, Brian.
Thanks, Eric. So, Brian Hare, I'm in the Department of Evolutionary Anthropology at Duke. I've been here since 2008, so I guess I'm a newbie. I started a new model of how to study animals. So instead of having animals in a vivarium in cages, the idea was to invite dog owners to bring their four-legged children to Duke, and we could play games to see how they think. And it dawned on us that people were really enjoying this, and that why is it that only 1,500 pet owners in the local area get to do this? Why don't we use citizen science, put this all online, use science-based games, and give anybody in the world the opportunity to play the same type of games that we had created here at Duke to better understand, to identify bomb dogs for the Marine Corps, or to help identify the best service dog for the organizations we work with there. So, believe it or not, I got an email from Howie Reed, and Howie didn't necessarily, it was just a blast to everybody, and I kept getting these blasts that I was deleting about elevator pitches. And so one time I actually read it and I thought, well that'd be funny. And so I went over and I threw 3-4 slides together, and I did an elevator pitch, and some folks came up afterwards and said, "This is a great idea. You should do this. This is a great idea." And long story short, thank you, Howard. Long story short is I ended up meeting Kip Fry, and Kip is also a professor at Duke, and he is our CEO and president of Cognition, and he helped us found the company, and we were off and running. We've had a TV show on 60 Minutes, etc. And the whole approach is a citizen science approach to get people excited about science, and also learn more about their dogs. I think of it as like a Myers-Briggs for your dog. So that's basically what it was, or what happened.
It's a wonderful, Brian's story is a wonderful story. It's entrepreneurship and building, what I think is going to be a very successful company, hopefully a big television presence going forward. But, there's no HIPAA for your dog. And so at the same time we get to do all this entrepreneurship, Brian builds a database on animal cognition that'll really be unique in the world. And so, this is a really, really, really interesting example of entrepreneurship and how it fits in the university. Robin, you want to?
So for all of you, which was harder, finding management and mentorship to help you get along, or finding money? For the companies, when we're talking about.
Well, you know, my experience was with the startup process was 8-9 years ago. And we eventually, the process of finding money was time consuming. But I have to say, the OLV was really good. They brought people in. We didn't have to travel very much. We did occasionally, but mostly the funders came to us. But they were ultimately a consortium of 4 different well-known VCs funded together. And once they made the commitment to fund, they pretty much took care of everything. They found the management, etc. Were it not for that, that's something I really would have needed help with. Finding premises for the company, finding management. But they all had contacts, because that's what they did, and they took care of all that. So I would say, for me, it was finding the money that was needed. And then they appointed all the officers.
So the management came with the money.
Basically, yes, that's exactly.
Whether you liked it or not.
Whether you liked it or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't like it so much at the beginning because I wanted the premises to be local. The way I had defended to myself, going over to the dark side, was that the laboratories would be maybe in the triangle. I'd go out there a day a week, and that would be sort of my playground, and you know, where I could do the translation of it. But so they let me live that dream for 2 months. And then they told me they were moving the premises to Philadelphia, where they all lived.
Right.
Because they were all from GSK. And that was the end of that. So, anyway.
So again, my story was I just got very lucky on a lark and did this elevator pitch, and a student introduced me to Kip Fry, and the Duke network took over after that. And Kip decided this was something he was excited about, and because there are lots of people looking for opportunities for startups to invest in among alums, etc., that's basically how it all happened for us, unfolded.
I think for us, the money has been, we've only been around for a year and a half. In that time, we've raised about $3 million between grants and revenue. But the challenge hasn't been management or even the money, although we could use more. But I think has been actually finding people with the right backgrounds. And in particular, because we're trying to take a tech approach to conservation, you know, which used to be essentially a discipline of the world's most depressing people, right? Our job as conservation biologists is to note and lament the passing of species and to get everyone else depressed. That if we actually took an engineering approach to what we're trying to do, if we actually thought about how do we harness biomedical engineers, how do we harness microbiology, how do we harness sensors, that was a different approach. And it's really hard to find people who cross those disciplines who both want to have impact. And in particular, it's hard to do it in Washington, D.C.
I have to ask the next question. So now that you all have been through different things, what other venues do you think that Duke excels? Clearly the Duke alums are spectacular. I will tell you stories. When it first got announced that I was coming here, I had people visit me in Michigan who were Duke alums. It's like, I'm not even there yet. But are there other things that, looking back, would have helped you that, you know, Duke could do for you? Meaning, you know, mentorship, or, you know, I think the other thing is all of you can become mentors, and hopefully you will become mentors to other faculty and other students. But are there the other things that, if looking back, would have been nice to have had?
In my case, I had a very positive experience, even though I was told by others that you not have such a positive experience. I think that was a function of the particular person in the OLV that I was working with, who's now, her name was Brandy Salmon, and she's, I don't know what she does these days, but she's not don't think she's with Duke anymore. But I would think that having an entity like this, which could be sort of as turnkey as possible, so that the faculty member says, okay, I got an idea, here it is. You do the rest. Bring in.
Well, we kind of need you guys.
Well, yeah, bring in the funders, we'll do the science. You bring in the funders, let them talk to us. And, if we get going and then get the management, all these things, then I think, I don't know, and that was well advertised, I would think that that would attract a lot of faculty.
You mentioned that you had some of your students that went with this. Are they still at the company?
One of the three is, all three became the first 3 employees of the company.
Yeah.
They were all with the company for at least 3 years of the 8. 2 have moved on to more senior positions at other companies and doing very well. And one guy has stayed on and has risen quite high in the company. They now have about, I guess, 60 employees and have been through, I think, 3 rounds of financing before they went public.
Yeah.
And they seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah. Alex?
I gotta give yourself, Matt, Howard, other people here credit, because this is an extraordinary resource to have at a university whose main motto is knowledge and service to society, whose idea is that of translation. Because this is really the engine that allows that to happen. And all the things that I think that INE has built, including this bullpen, I think are exactly the kind of things I wish I had more of when I was an undergrad. Duke was a very different place in '91. It wasn't as international. I think the other thing, the one thing I've been lucky is I came back to the university now as Chandler Innovator Residence, but before as one of the first Rubenstein Fellows at the university, was teaching here, and a lot of the students are now deeply engaged with what I do, and I love that university to industry or business pipeline, and the idea is, can we build more of that to bring real world problems back to the students and to have the students actually engage. I would say, there's 2 things we need in our education. One is, and I think things like Vast Connections get at that, one is a problem-oriented approach, right? And I would always argue that, we should ask not what is your major, but what is your problem as our organizing principle for the university. I think the other is the interdisciplinarity and really being able to recognize that no single individual anymore has the solutions to the problem, but it is really the collection of individuals that get us there much faster.
So, my story in terms of how it could be better, how could it get better? What a kooky idea. You're going to start a company to study dogs and how they think. That's nuts. And the fact that Duke made it seem possible, and that people got excited and people were supportive. I'm an evolutionary anthropologist. Who's ever heard of an evolutionary anthropologist starting a company? So how does it get better than that in terms of the support that Duke provides, and the fact that Dognition now we're in the bullpen here getting things done. So it's been wonderful, and I think there's more resources. I think that we're going to continue to build a culture where the unthinkable is thinkable. And, I'm just glad to be part of it.
So Bob, let me put you on the spot, right? Because you've been here a long time, and the university was a very different place in 1973 than it is today. Never do these things. We would never be having them. And I know too, what a student of the university, the sort of capital university you are. So tell me from your perspective, is this a good thing? Is this something that we should be doing? Have your views changed on this over time?
Yes, very much so. I think it's a very important endeavor. I can't tell you how different the environment was then. It was about as non-entrepreneurial as it is possible to imagine. We made a number of discoveries in the 70s and the 80s, which by any reasonable standard should have been patented and protected. We never filed for that. To be honest with you, it never entered my mind, nor was anybody encouraging that kind of thing. Interestingly, a number of the discoveries that we made in terms of cloning various receptors and things in the 80s, we never patented. Other institutions did after we had come first with most of the stuff. But so we would send out clones and cell lines expressing these receptors, which were a bonanza for drug discovery. So prior to that, the way you tested drugs was to inject them into animals and do all kinds of crazy, complicated tests. And here we had basically invented, not a word I like to use, we would say discovered. We had invented technology that permitted you to screen hundreds of thousands or millions of drugs in a few days in the laboratory without ever having recourse to an animal and getting the same kinds of information about those drugs. Patented nothing. And we even sent all the reagents to academic institutions. Okay.
Probably without an agreement. Probably without any agreements, too.
Correct. Absolutely not. I mean, I didn't hear of an MTA until I don't know when, but it sure wasn't in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s. We just sent them. People would write in, and we'd send them the materials. Now, when it came to companies, all the drug companies started requesting these reagents. So I don't know why it occurred to me one day. I called up OLV or whatever it was called in those days, and I said, "Is it all right to send it?" And they said, "What are you, crazy? Of course not. We got a license." They said, "Do you have patents?" I said, "No." Well, I guess we got nothing to license. They said, "Well, we're going to charge a fee." So they worked out some fee structure. And then, whenever a company wanted these reagents, we couldn't license anything because we had no intellectual property. We would send them the reagents, and they would pay a nice fee to Duke, and my lab would get a piece of it. And it turns out, I remember being told, in the 80s and 90s, our reagents were the single largest source of outside income to OLV. Literally millions of dollars.
You're probably the only source.
Probably the only source. Yeah, they said by far was that, many millions of dollars were generated. But I often think, what would have been generated if we actually had some intellectual property? But, so that all changed eventually. I can't remember when. But it's amazing how non-entrepreneurial everything about this. Now, I don't know if that was unique to Duke or that was just generally the situation.
I used to always laugh about, I'd been at Michigan, I don't know, only a few years, I got a call from a chair. This is probably 10 years ago, saying, "We have a candidate here, and the candidate wants to meet with you. Why?" And it was the first time a chair had a faculty member want to talk about the tech transfer policies and things like that. Now it's kind of routine, or I'm used to it being routine. That new faculty coming in, they want to know about what kind of entrepreneurship programs, what kind of policies do you have, what's your conflict of interest. It's just kind of routine. But back then, the chair was like, I can't even figure out what they. Right. So I have a question. Surely it didn't all go wonderfully well from the very beginning. What's the one thing you do differently? Now that if you were talking to anybody else here who wants to start up a company, couldn't possibly have all been so. Because boy, in my world, it doesn't go that smoothly.
Well, I can say, as I was very naive. I think I've communicated that. I just thought, oh yeah, we're gonna do this company thing. And just it's like publishing a paper or whatever. Take 10% of my time or whatever, and whoops, no, it doesn't take 10% of your time. It's a little bit more than that. So that was the big, wow, it's a big investment. And then, it was like, oh, well, we'll start the company, then it works, and then, that's it. And it's more like raising a child, and it's years, not months.
Realistic expectations.
Yeah, right.
Alex?
I think it's a really tough question. I think in some ways, because we didn't start off with an investment, we actually started off with research grants and then with revenue, actually selling product services in terms of what we're trying to do. I felt like we're building the plane after we pushed it off the cliff and jumped into it. And there hasn't really been the time for strategic planning. We have entirely different models of how to do IP because we use open collaborative communities to build technology together. And we're still trying to figure that out, and we're still trying to figure out what's the right pathway to sustainability and impact in terms of what we're doing. We're now actually coming to Duke Law School and Duke Business School to ask some of those questions in the clinics that they're having and benefit from the genius that's on this campus. But I think just having the time to think,
managing growth.
yeah, would have been better.
I am remarkably naive about the whole process, even though I've been through it once. Because as I listened to people talk, I realized, I guess, this was 8 years ago, I don't know how different things are in the district. But I guess we started our company at a different stage at many of these enterprises.
Yeah.
So for example, they brought in various VCs, and in the end, 4 of them got together. I don't know how that happened. I guess somebody was talking to them, and they talked to each other. And the initial commitment to funds was $35 million, an initial tranche of $25 million, split between the 4. Then
Can
some
we
venture.
describe to make sure that everybody understands this is unusual?
What's
Don't expect
This is what I'm trying to get at. I mean, I had no idea, you know. So that was my idea of what the process was like. They gave us $25 million.
Yeah.
They hired these top executives from GSK, which had, I guess, either merged with somebody or whatever, who were out of jobs. And there was a second tranche to get to $35 million. And everything seemed hunky-dory. But I gather not all companies start at that level. That, you know, you start with $1 million or $2 million.
That wasn't my experience either.
So, you know, I think I've gotten a somewhat different view of things, maybe a somewhat unrealistic view
Yes.
about how the process works.
I don't want to keep people from their wine for too long, but we maybe have time for 1 or 2 questions from the crowd. Yes.
I have a question about if you could speak to the conflict, or if there were conflicts, I imagine there were, between your what was required of you as an entrepreneur and your real job as an academic, and how you kind of dealt with that and balanced that.
Well, in my own case, that was what I always dreaded. That's what kept me from this. But because I was afraid, I'm just a very focused guy. And I think the success I've had in large part lies from my ability to focus a lot. And I was really afraid that this would, as I said, diffuse that focus. It did not, because I didn't give it that much time. It was very, very limited. Because they brought in such an experienced management team, I didn't have a lot to do there. I was truly the scientific advisor, and I had my 3 guys who basically brought all the know-how and scientific expertise with them. So I was, right from day one, cast in the role of sort of scientific advisor and guru, a role I rather enjoyed.
There you go.
So much the same one that I play in my laboratory. So in that sense, it wasn't all that different. And I would go up there once a month. We would talk on the phone for a few hours at the beginning, once a week, and it was like having lab meetings. I mean, it was their data, not the lab's data. So in that sense, it was very much like what I've been doing anyway. And in that role, I found it enjoyable because it was doing what I could not do in my laboratory, which is take technology that clearly could lead to a drug or drugs. But I couldn't do that in the lab. So this was like terrific. I mean, it was really accomplishing what I wanted.
Study after study after study shows that our most entrepreneurial faculty are also our most successful academics, right? That's been demonstrated just over and over again, and this notion that one takes away from the other is completely a false dichotomy. One last question, and then we'll get back to drinking. Yeah, Larry.
So for Eric and Robin maybe. So how much do you think Bayh-Dole played in changing the environment that Bob talked about? The 1970s versus today, how much did Bayh-Dole policy play in that?
Well, there were no tech transfer offices, that's for sure. I mean, my profession started from Bayh-Dole. Does everybody know what Bayh-Dole is? Hopefully everybody knows what Bayh-Dole is.
I'm shaking my head no.
Okay, so prior to Bayh-Dole, which was in 1980, universities did
I was
not
4.
necessarily own the inventions that were made using federal funding. Bayh-Dole said that the university would own the invention, and then the university could go ahead and license it. And so that created a whole profession. And also what Bayh-Dole said was, if the university licensed it, we must share with these, and it went just like this. It really didn't happen until the 90s, most universities. But yeah, I'd argue that's been the premier thing that changed our world.
I think the lack of Bayh-Dole accomplishes what Bayh-Dole was designed to do, right? I mean, Bayh-Dole was designed to make sure that research, that fundamental knowledge that was created with taxpayer dollars benefited the taxpayer. And I think by going to a situation where the universities and the inventors had ownership of that, it accomplished it in a way that never could have happened before Bayh-Dole. So I think, you know, bringing Bayh-Dole in accomplished what the goal was before. So that's very much my belief. All right, well listen, it's wonderful to have everybody here tonight. We have lots of food and drink. Again, this is the beginning of Entrepreneurship Week, and I hope that we'll see lots of you at the other event. So thanks very much for coming tonight. Thanks, Mark.